So first of all, my name is Mustafa Koita. I'm the founder and CEO of Koita, the organic milk company. This is Food Talks. It's a webinar series that's focused on the food business here in the UAE. Last week, we had a webinar about what's the new normal. We talked really about consumers and how consumer trends are changing and how as businesses we're adapting. Today, our topic is actually going to be looking a little bit inward, and it's called Work Redefined. So we're going to talk about a ton of HR issues that a lot of us in the food business have been dealing with. Just to remind you, next week, June 15th, we have a webinar called Original Marketing Plan Scrapped, which is going to talk about obviously the marketing side. And then on June 21st, we're going to have a webinar called Making Stuff Work, which is about the supply chain and operational side, of the business. So I want to introduce all of our food panel big shots. I'm really proud to have you guys all on the panel. Bilal is the founder and CEO of B&B. They're a conglomerate that does manufacturing and a lot of different types of foods, chocolates, Mediterranean sweets, and also healthy foods. They also own some brands like Freaking Healthy. They produce Fade Fit Kids, so they act as a supplier. And they're all over the region, and they just recently landed a contract in the United States with Walmart. So that's been very exciting for him. Olivia, who was inspired by her French grandfather and Nordic roots, founded Hello Chef. It's the region's fastest growing home delivery meal prep company. As I said last week, I've used them, and they've even made bad cooks like me look good in the kitchen. And she's really been doing a lot of really great things in her space. Dinesh Pagrani is the director, sits on the board, and also third generation owner of one of the oldest retail chains in the region. That's Choitrams. They also do some distribution as well. And I think what's great about Dinesh's perspective is he started at the bottom and worked his way up through that organization. So he's seen all sides of the retail and the distribution business in the region, which is really, really valuable. And last but not least, I've got my celebrity chef, Chef Izu. He helped start. I'm glad we got sound effects too. He helped start a very famous restaurant, Le Petit Maison, which anyone in the fine dining circles is probably familiar with. He went on to start Le Sur, and now focuses a lot of his time on Gaia, Kareen, and Lighthouse. And again, as I said last week, every time I see him, I tend to gain a little bit of weight here and there. So I think what's great about the panel is that you've got a lot of diversity in the food business. You've got F&B, you've got home delivery, you've got manufacturing, you've got retail, you've got a brand. You've also got different sizes of businesses, and you have some businesses in the COVID Corona time that have grown, and some who've had to shrink and adapt. So you've got a lot of different perspectives here. A couple guidelines before we get into it is if the participants can please, we've got a lot of great questions, so let's keep your answers to 60 to 90 seconds. If you want to debate a point, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. We'll try and keep it free flowing. And please mute your side when you're not talking. For the audience, if you've logged in and you're not familiar with Zoom, you'll see us, but we can't see you. You will, however, be able to participate, and please don't be shy. Feel free to ask as many questions as possible. We will get to everyone's questions. Just put it in the Q&A section or send it in the chat. I'll try and address each of those questions. So, okay, you guys ready to get going?
For sure, cool. Let's go.
So look, I mean, I think we've been through this Corona time, and we're starting to now see, at least in the UAE, things open up. And I think the number one thing that I hear about people is that, some of businesses have been affected where they're having to downsize, and some have had to grow. In the food business, we've seen some growth. But for those who've had to go through downsizing, and Bilal, I'll ask you this question first. Have you had any downsizing issues, and what have some of the challenges been, and how have you kind of dealt with it, if you have had any?
So when all this started, the biggest variable was, when does it end, right? We never knew how long this is going to last for, and because we're present in several markets and all of them were affected, nothing was spared, we took decisions early on. So we've had to let go of about anything between 25 and 30% of our workforce. And if it was a very difficult decision to do, but it was key. And the challenges in that is when in normal days, if you let go of workforce, the procedure is very clear to cancel for them and give them tickets to fly back home, except no one was leaving the country. So how do you manage that? Particularly, we're talking about the workforce from the factory, and they're all staying in our labor accommodation. So we basically took a decision to keep paying everyone a basic salary. So we gave them all their gratuities and everything, but keep giving them enough to live on until flights would open back and they'd be able to go home. Also the difficult part is, with the admin, with the skilled workforce, letting go of people that have been with you for a very long time. That decision was taken on a, it's good to have or need to have basis. So a lot of times in the company, you have people who, they're nice to have, but when times come like this, they're not a need to have. And unfortunately,
well, if you could just extrapolate a little bit, when that's an interesting topic. When you have to really decide who do you have to cut, who do you keep. Can you give me a little bit more detail on how do you decide a need to have versus a want? Need versus a want.
Yeah. So I mean, if we look at, I can give you an example of one department, right? Like if we look at our finance department, in every position, whether it was treasury, receivables, payables, so on, we had 2 people in each, and because of the volume of work, and if someone went on holiday, we'd always have that other person who can take over. In times like this, we only needed one, per job description.
Great. And I also understood that as you let some of these people go, I think you built some sort of reskilling program. Could you tell me a little bit about that too?
So when we sat there and we filtered out who stays and who goes, particularly in our unskilled labor force, a lot of them have never, now the world's moved towards technology, right? So a lot of them don't know how to use computers. So if we look at our warehousing, we needed to make sure that everyone we kept knew how to use our ERP system, WMS, and anyone who was just, basically carrying products were people we would let go of first. So we set up a program where over the weekend, anyone who is willing to learn can come, and we teach them for free how to use Excel, how to use our ERP system, and those are the ones we kept. So even though they were unskilled, if they were willing to learn, we kept them. We have a very good, one of our staff actually, he went through this program and now he manages all our accommodation in terms of all the documentation, etc. And he was one of our most junior staff. So in a way, I think a lot of the unskilled labor force, if you can teach them how to use the technology or give them a skill that then would keep them on board. Otherwise, those would be the first that we'd had to let go of.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Well, it's always tough to have to let go of people, especially those that have been with you for a long time. I'm sure it's also a bit emotional, but I'm glad you've been able to manage it, the best way possible. On the flip side, Olivia, I want to take the conversation your way because your business has actually grown a lot, over the Corona time because of, online delivery and cooking at home. And I understand that you're hiring people. So can you tell me a little bit about what's going on with you? Where are you looking to increase your headcount, and what have the challenges been? And how have you sort of overcome those as you've gone through that different kind of process?
Yeah, so first of all, since February, I just had a look at the numbers this morning. We've increased headcount to date by 60%, and it's one of those things you don't want to jump into it because you don't know how long this is going to take. So you're kind of a bit scared of making that investment. But we were growing, steadily anyway as a relatively new industry in the market. So we felt like we need to stick to our plans. We have increased the capacity in both, in the more less skilled workers. So in our operations, we obviously had to bring in quite a few extra people in the team to make sure that the food is handled properly, to make sure that we could manage the quantities. that was probably the toughest because we had to safeguard the business at the same time. This was right at the beginning of March. So we had to like nearly overnight find accommodation close to the office, relocate everybody in the team, keep people in quarantines when we brought in new people, try to onboard people remotely. So that was one part of the equation, and then obviously it's the sort of more skilled professional people in the office. Onboarding remotely, hiring remotely, integrating people with the team remotely, making sure they buy into the culture without being able to go for coffee, to go for lunch, to organize, proper teaming events. It's been
And
a big learning.
who is actually doing all of this stuff? Did you have an HR manager? Or was it you as the entrepreneur when you were doing it? Was it a one-woman show? I mean, who was doing it?
So I'm very lucky. I'm in business with my husband, so I'm no longer a one-woman show, which is great. So we're very much a two-man show, and thankfully we are no longer that either. So we've been able to build mostly during this year, since the beginning of the year, a great sort of middle management, without wanting to build too much structure in a small team, but being able to bring in those key people that have been able to absorb quickly the culture and how things are done. So a lot of the operations the work that we need to do in operations was handled by our operation manager, who joined from South Africa in February, and he got here. He got a couple of weeks of normalcy, and then thrown in the deep end with coronavirus.
Yeah.
And the rest was done.
Way to get introduced to Dubai at the right time,
Yes, exactly. No, we're happy we managed to get him into the country. And yeah, like I was saying, when we were sort of warming up before we opened the webinar, we've just hired. So we completely remotely hired and onboarded our first HR manager. And she joined us last Sunday, and she's been busy since, trying to build in proper structured onboarding programs and figure out how we can continue carry the culture.
All right. So you've just hired an HR manager to help with some of that. Okay. All right. That's great. All right. Dinesh, I know you're in the retail and in the distribution business. I'm just curious, the assumption would be, retail has been so busy lately. I would assume, there's been a lot of growth on the HR side or having to adapt. I mean, have you had in different parts of your business, have you had to let go or increase headcount? And what have the challenges been that you've encountered on your side of the business?
So on the retail side, obviously with a national sterilization program, our store hours are also limited. So we've been able to redeploy our retail staff to kind of cope up with the increased demand in those trading hours. So it's not necessarily been a case where we've been overloaded and need to hire staff. We have had to hire some staff, but the figure is quite nominal.
And the new hires that you've had to hire, which roles are they typically?
They're mainly at the very sort of base level retail jobs. People working as stockists at the checkout, mainly those sort of functions. On the distribution side, it has been a bit of a mixed bag. Over there, we have also had some cases of coronavirus, more coming from our distribution side of the business, because especially maybe you might know this, Mustafa, but when the merchandisers are going out stocking your products in the stores, they're going to multiple different locations. I mean, we're a frontline essential service provider. So I mean, you've got people, people who would have even had coronavirus have always continued still going to the supermarket. But in one sense, we've seen a lot more cases pop up in the distribution side of the business, mainly with our merchandiser going from store to store to store.
And so, sorry, Dinesh, without jumping around too much, when you've had a case of coronavirus with an employee, what's been your procedure? How do you deal with that within the company? Are there certain things? How do you isolate them? How does their salary get affected? I'm just curious if you could give me a quick rundown on that.
So, I mean, we've got a staff headcount close to 3,000 people. And we didn't want anything to be compromised at all from this. So starting at one of your questions on the salary level, all our staff were given an additional COVID reference sick leave to make sure that nobody felt that, oh, their salaries would be cut for them not coming into work for that period. So we didn't want, anybody to really take any chances. Internally, we've actually got it's literally called a COVID task force. And we rolled out a COVID infection prevention plan very early on in March to every single individual working in the organization. And it kind of sets out key guidelines when somebody has got COVID or when it's suspected of COVID, what to kind of do in those two different sort of elements.
So could you walk me through, let's say I'm an employee at your organization, I'm positive for COVID. What would happen next?
So if you were tested positive, depending on where you were working, obviously straight away that person is quarantined depending on where they stay. If they stay in our staff accommodation, we've set up different quarantine zones within our staff accommodation as well. I'll just step off from the staff accommodation point. Most of our cases, even though majority of our workers live within our staff accommodation, most of the cases we've had have come outside of the staff accommodation, just because we've taken such stringent protocols within our staff accommodation. That person is then obviously quarantined, and then HR is in touch with that person to literally track their whereabouts and who that person would have been come in touch with. People are identified as primary or secondary. So, if I just took the example of, just say, Mustafa, you were working for me and you met Bilal.
We all work for you, Dinesh, in some way, shape, or form, yeah.
Bilal will be termed as primary. If Bilal then went on Olivia will be termed as secondary. And the primary and secondary people are kind of go through the different levels of quarantine.
So are you kind of like doing your own internal investigative relationship mapping or, distance mapping sort of based on where the person works and stuff?
All our cases are reported to the DHA and to the municipality as per the law. But, we've taken very stringent, because look, we're working with food. We've always kind of done well in this region, have trust and affinity with our customers, whether it be, business to business or business to consumer. And that's something we've never really put in jeopardy. So we've even done prevention program, prevention cleaning in a lot of as well, as well as sort of, when a case has come up, like, we have shut down one of our stores, Suffolk Park, for 2 days, and when a case did come up.
So, and Dinesh, before I move on to Izu, what's outside of the COVID issue, have you had to let go of any staff in any of your departments or divisions?
No, not specifically right now. I think, look, the future is obviously a little bit up in the air. But as of right now, no, we're not letting let go of anyone.
Okay.
I'll just finish one point which you mentioned about how our business has been affected by COVID. I'll say specifically in the wholesale department, so we've got certain exclusivity with certain brands like Rainbow, PVM, Smith, Mentos, Weetabix, Quaker, Frito-Lay. So because our sales team have been kept in quarantine, and especially if they follow that primary and secondary program, we've had our sales team who aren't attending to the market, attending to the customers. But so our business over there has actually dropped. And so, but at the same time, we're not ready to take any kind of, take any chance.
Yeah.
So we're also very accepting to take a little bit of a business hit in these areas to ensure our staff safety and the safety.
Okay. That's very interesting. Chef Izu, being in the restaurant business, as you know, before we started the call, you were talking about, it's a very people relationship sort of atmosphere at Gaia and all the other restaurants you manage. Have you had to let go of any people or hire any people? And if so, how have you managed that? What would have been the biggest challenges, if any?
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that at the end of the day, you can't keep the same staff level when your capacity has dropped. It's not viable. And also being closed for so long, because at the end of the day, we are the first industry to take the knock, and we're going to be the last one to recover, because when you go to a restaurant, you definitely don't want to be social distancing. It's that communication exchange. So
Yeah.
we're a platform where social distancing cannot apply. I can't work from home. I mean, the chefs can't work from home, and you can't have a Zoom dinner. At the end of the day, we can be as innovative as we want, but having a Zoom dinner or a Zoom drink, hey, it's not the same. It's not the same interaction. And the reason why we go and have a drink with each other is also to feel the energy of the person. It's not just to have a glass of something. It's the energy that you exchange with others, that you might be in a bad mood. And I keep saying, one of the philosophy of food is food transmit happiness to others. Or when you taste something in a sharing capacity and you're eating the same food, the reaction of like, wow, oh yeah. Or when it's like when you yawn, someone next to you yawning, and you yawn, because it's transferred. It's exactly the same thing.
I make people yawn all day. I make people yawn all day.
But
Chef,
food.
Chef, what I'm curious about is that in that atmosphere, have you had to let go of like sous chefs or staff or anything? Have you taken that hit now, or are you kind of waiting and seeing before if you need to or not?
I mean, a lot of we went through. A dialogue, in the sense that whoever can go back to their home and stay there, and if it's possible and it's safe, they do so. So we whittled it down. Those who can leave, or those we have a lot of Greek people or chefs or whatever, they can go back and maybe find a job in the islands for the season. They went back.
So was it kind of like a voluntary? Like you gave them the option of a voluntary leave?
They still got their visas. Officially they still got their visas, but they're not in the country, because at the end of the day, we couldn't operate with the same manning for very much less customers. So we had to do that. Unfortunately, yes, we have to let a lot of the people we let go were on probation, because as soon as they cross a certain threshold, they're fully hired and everything. And we can't be in a situation where the future is very unknown. We don't know how this is going to affect, or how deep it's going to affect. We reopened about 2 weeks ago, less than that. Yes, it's positive. People want to live again, but how long does this trend stay on and boost the industry? And this industry is one of the industries definitely.
Are there any concerns from that? What's the most common concern you've had from your employees in the restaurant business coming to you guys, coming to yourself? Is there, a number one? What's the most common question they ask you?
We talked about HR. I act like an HR officer myself, in the sense of the word. Like, if they got a complaint, I take him to the office and we talk about it. And we leave deciding I was right. So that's how easy my HR is.
Okay, cool.
So no, but everyone has concerns. You have to give them an ear. And that's what we do. A lot of times we just let them go through their concerns. And a lot of people do have concerns because they have family that rely on them and depend on them. Because you got to remember, each employee has a chain that goes back to somewhere else. And a lot of people in Dubai have that. And this is where it's heart-wrenching within our industry. There's a lot of people that are suffering, and it is one of these things. It is a cruel time at the moment, which it makes you think about the humanity of or how we react to these things. Do we close our eyes, or do we face it and we go on? Do something about
it's got to be certainly tough, both commercially and and emotionally for everyone. I agree. Hey, I wanted to shift the conversation to technology. As everyone knows, we've all heard about Zoom. We're using it right now. Everyone's got Zoom fatigue, so I don't want to get into just Zoom, but technology has come into play a lot. And Bilal, you have a large number of staff. I just want to know, besides Zoom, I guess I have a bit of a two-part question. Besides Zoom, are there any other technologies that you guys have adopted that have helped you get through this time? And the other question that's on a lot of people's minds is that, Zoom just recently opened up, and a lot of people are wondering, is it going to shut down again, at some point? And what are your thoughts on that as well? So two-part question.
Like, and it's either Zoom or it's Microsoft Teams, right? That's what we're using right now. I think for us, the bigger question is, we sent a questionnaire to all our staff saying, who wants to continue working from home? That was in May for the summer. And literally it was a 99% feedback that we want to come back to the office. The disconnect we have, we're kind of, it's what Chef Izu was saying, a factory cannot work from home. And our admin, I mean, there's a few that can, sales work outside, but the rest of us have to be here. All our R&D staff, everyone has to be here. So culture is the biggest gap there is when it comes to working from home, right? So the finance team can work from home, but everyone said the same thing. 2 months in, and we just felt we're all a little bit disconnected. So I think the new norm for us now is whatever technology there will be, we will find and use. But we've done this thing where anyone who can work from home will, but has to check in once a week to the office where they sit with the team, catch up on everything, and just to keep the culture of what B&B is really between the staff.
So are you offering up some sort of hybrid work from home option, or are you saying, hey, everybody's coming back at 100%?
Everyone has the option. If they can work from home, everyone has the option to work from home. And if they can work, and if they want to work from the office, we don't force them to work from home.
Okay, it's interesting.
We've changed the furniture in our office now, so everything's 2 meters apart. Even the conference tables, have that distance, and so we've done that bit. But people are choosing to come to the office.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We've also, we're coming back 100% next week. We've also had to distance everything in the office and bring in cleaners more frequently and stuff like that. But we've also done a hybrid solution. So what we're doing is we're offering, in the beginning, we're going to work in the office for 4 days, and we're going to do Thursday work from home. And we're going to try that for a week because we did see a lot of benefit from working from home as well. But I think what we've decided to set expectations is we've told the employees transparently that, hey, we're going to try a hybrid model. We don't know what's the best, solution, but we're going to change it up every couple of weeks based on employee feedback. But for right now, we're doing 4 in and 1 work from home. We'll take it from there. Bilal, on Zoom, what about sales and other Zoom-based activities? If Zoom were to go away, would that affect your business right now?
If Zoom went away, we'd use Microsoft Teams, right? But the key thing in sales, a decision that we took and that's going to save us a lot of money in the future is no more corporate travel. We have around 28 people or so on our sales team that travel all around the globe. And we realized that during these 2 months, we were doing all the meetings online and saved us a lot of money, and unnecessary, let's say, expenses were cut. And so, in fact, the sales team have become 100 times more efficient from working from the field, I'd say, not from home, So
okay, great.
Is one of the things that will be affected mainly.
Okay, Olivia, how about in your business? Have there been any new technologies at Zoom Plus? And then I'd also like to hear your feedback on if Zoom were to go away, what would you do?
So we don't use Zoom at all. So we just use any Google tools. But I guess if Google Hangouts was to go away, it would be in trouble, of course, because at the moment we use the Agile and the Scrum methodology to run our meeting structure, and that's been really a life saver for us, because as soon as we went to working from home office, we just implemented exactly the same meetings, and it's worked really well. I think that's.
Sorry, Olivia, I know you're working from home right now. Are you guys planning to go back to the office at some point, or are you planning to stay out of the office?
So we started that last week with just like a Google Sheet where we book our time to go to the office. So we try to keep it to 50%. Not everybody can come back to the office. I do employ those strange people called mothers. And as long as there's no schools and no summer camps, there's no way those people can come to work. So Yeah, so we just have to adapt. So whoever wants and needs and has to and has this feel that they need to go to the office is more than welcome. We're trying to make sure we book our slots in time, and if you can't come, it's absolutely fine.
So Olivia, would you say your policy is, it sounds to me like it's still work from home, but it's optional to go to the office? Is that kind of how it is?
Exactly. It's more
So
like
slightly
that.
different than Bilal's policy.
Yeah, so we've asked people as well on our daily huddles, you know, checking in, how's everybody doing? Do you feel, and obviously people that live alone, you know, like single people living alone in apartments around Dubai are going absolutely nuts. So we need to let them come to the office, see people, have some proper interaction. But for others, it might be a bit more tricky to leave everything behind and come back to the office.
Okay, and again, if Zoom were to go away, what would you do?
We'd probably have to figure something else out, but like I said, we're on Google Hangouts, so
You're on Hangouts. I think Hangouts is another technology that also opened up recently. So if that went away, it sounds like Microsoft Meets might be another option that you have. I'm not a Microsoft guy, but I would do it. I would do it myself. Dins, what about your office environment? I mean, let's take the retail to the side. During the the quarantine, were you guys still all at the office? If not, what was the percentage, and how have you guys all transitioned back? And then I'm going to ask you the Zoom call at the end of that too.
No, so yeah, we kind of started the guidelines throughout, and we're kind of maintaining 30% in the office. We were a little bit lucky. We had some spare capacity in our warehouse office, and an office we have above one of our stores, which wasn't much in usage. So we pushed some of the team over there, and some people are still also operating out of there right now. So even our head office is not going to be back to the same 100% occupancy. There is still a little bit of working from home. It's all kind of down to the department. As you know, as some of you have also said, some certain departments, certain people just cannot work from home. People who are kind of doing.
Like which departments would that be that you would say, hey, there's no way they can work from home. They have to be in, there's got to be in-office interaction.
So there's one, I mean, the sales team, for example, the van sales guys who go around rainbow milk to all the cafeterias and grocery shops. That's a very high turnover business for us. They need to come into the office, process the orders, load up their vans, go back out again. People which can work from home, like our procurement division, the guys who you deal with, Mustafa. Obviously, right now there's not much happening in terms of supplier meetings so much right now. That's still a lot of that's happening online, so those guys can work a little bit more. But I think it's also important to keep some sort of presence rolling as well, and and some momentum within. And I think that can kind of be lost a little bit working from home, and it's sort of disillusionment. One, I think, important of lack of separation between your personal and professional work, but maybe a sort of disenchantment away from the company culture, its values, workspace environment. I mean, it's ironic sometimes we've even had people all on Microsoft Teams in the same office having a Teams meeting.
No, I think it's we've had a lot of sort of the grass is always greener. So when everyone worked from home for the first week, everyone was so excited. They were like, "Hey, look at how productive I am! I got 100 meetings. I got 20,000 things done in a day." And then sort of later on, I think when things opened up, we had like the salespeople met at a cafe, 3 or 4 of them meet, and I think that's when they realized after a few weeks of the lockdown that hey, there's a lot of water cooler banter. There's small things that come up that when you're on a Zoom call don't sometimes come up for a number of reasons. So I think there's a nice hybrid of both.
We still have a lot of social distancing measures in the office. I mean, we've got a games room which people normally kind of use in their breaks or lunch or after work. That's being completely closed.
How much time do you spend in the games room, Dinesh? Be honest with me. Tell me.
Everyone would lose a table tennis if I played. I don't want to make it unfair for everyone else.
Okay. Just checking. Yeah. All right, cool. Izu, I look when I was at Gaia the other night and I saw you. I remember, you're out and about. Everyone's in the restaurant. I know there's an office side of the business, as well. or is there? Does that office side affect you? Is the first question. And then have you been using Zoom also? I know you have a lot of other businesses. And how dependent have you become on Zoom would be the second question.
I mean, Mustafa, the thing is, I'm a traditionalist. I mean, I always say when you shake someone by the hand, all these contracts, a handshake is a contract, and that you can never take away from my personality, because I need to connect with people to be able to, because what we do is about trust. I get the social distancing and everything, but it can't. I don't believe that could be the norm for my industry. Yes, we have an office. I personally have an office which I haven't visited for like the last year. I pay for the office space, and it's quite nice. I think I put a new sofa in there, but I've never sat on that new sofa. But the thing is, you got to remember, Mustafa. You got to imagine. You know what a sleeping bag is. You put a sleeping bag on, yeah. You do all your business in that sleeping bag. You do maybe your toiletry in that sleeping bag. You do your work in that sleeping bag. You do everything. It's not mentally stimulating to do everything in one space. It's impossible. And whoever tells me that they become efficient working from home, I don't know. I'm not gonna call anybody anything, but I'm just thinking it's impossible to be as efficient in one space, because it's like my kids. Home is their chill time. It's not their classroom. It's like my son. He was on Zoom call, yeah. He was yes, miss, and he finishes Zoom call. I hate you. I hate. And it's like he's changed like a different person. He is a different person. With his teacher, he's got a structure. With us, it's every word. Oh, you're the worst daddy in the world, because I made him do his work. So you got to imagine that being in different environment brings out another character of who you are. And that's where when all this Zoom and everything is finished, I'm sorry, I don't believe that. Yes, it has a future for certain things, but that interaction that we have as humans, it's impossible for us to let go of it. I mean,
would I be correct in saying that in your environment, in the restaurant, the fine dining restaurant business, and also knowing who you are as a person and a personality, I mean, it's almost impossible to do this stuff unless you're there in person. I think that's what
impossible. I mean, I used to fly a lot with Emirates. I mean, I don't know. I think I got gold member twice in 1 year. But because the reason why I did that, because I used to consult or do a few work in Saudi. I can send them recipes, but what is it? It cannot show the passion I have for that dish on a recipe card. It's impossible. I have to taste it with them, go through the different layers of experience in that, for them to understand, and also to teach people to be owners, stakeholders of that product. So in my industry, I mean, some people work differently. I work very traditional. I worked in Spain, where I worked for a ruling where people, everything molecular and all, they deconstructed. If you came to my restaurant, I said, okay, here's your moussaka deconstructed. You go, but I came here for you to cook it for me, not for me to cook it. It's like, it looks nice, all this constructed, it looks pretty, but you want someone to give you their heart.
Yeah, I understand. Sorry, Izu. So let me ask you the second part. If Zoom went away, what would you do?
I'll go and say hello to them.
I don't know what to say. All right. That's another way. That's certainly another way. That's certainly another way of looking at it. Okay, cool. But by the way, Dinesh, I didn't get to ask you the Zoom question, but I assume you guys are using it. If it went away, what would your plan be? Or do you have any other platforms to communicate now that it seems like overall travel and other meetings are challenging?
Yeah, no, I think there's an element where you have to keep up with the rest of the world and where the rest of the industries are going. If corporate banks and internationally, regionally are having their meetings on Zoom, it is going to be very difficult. But I will also advance on what Izu mentioned, that you can't take away the persona, the personal touch, and what you can achieve in a business meeting face to face. I mean, imagine, Mustafa, if you met me for the first time over Zoom and we only ever had a virtual relationship, we wouldn't be friends today.
Yeah, I can guarantee with it, my first impression, definitely not, man. I'm sorry.
So, I mean, you know, when you meet face to face, you can kind of digress. You can have a conversation about life, a little bit about family. When you're on that Zoom call, when you're on that Microsoft Teams call, there's no room really for that chit chat. You know, it's everyone's very robotic almost when they're on it.
So I get that, you know, and I think, you know, my next question actually, you know, David from our audience asked, you know, a good question, because he said, you know, what's the approach now for the external meetings, you know, under this sort of new normal, and whether Zoom is here or not, and whether you want to have a meeting, for example, Bilal, I'm curious to hear in your organization, whether you want to have a meeting or not, you know, your customers, for example, might not want to meet you, you know? So how is your sales force really? And I think sales is the number one that comes to my mind. How's your sales force adapting to this new normal? Okay, Zoom is there or not, but what if the customer doesn't want to meet? How do you make the best of that situation?
So look, at the beginning, everyone in the first 2 months, so let's say April and May, everyone was saying, go meet the client in their office, right? But if that's the case, then, I mean, we had a no visitor policy, and then all the clients had a no visitor policy. So, you know, how do you meet everyone when everyone has a no visitor policy? Now everything's opened up a little bit more. We have a conference room where we get clients or suppliers in, and they go through the thermal screening and everything. But that's the only room where people can meet. So they can't go around our general office, just to protect all the other staff. And usually, I mean, for us, that is, you know, safe enough. We've seen clients as well open up more. We visit their stores. I mean, they're retailers, right? So they need, you know, they need to be there. All the major supermarket and hypermarket chains didn't accept on Zoom calls. Now they're beginning to see us more in person. So I think it's gradually opening up a little bit more. You're muted.
Oh, thanks. Sorry. Dinesh, so for example, you're a retailer. Are your buyers meeting people on Zoom now, or are they meeting them in person, or are they not meeting at all? Where are they? What's their policy? I'm just curious.
They've mainly been talking on the phone or meeting on Zoom. I think obviously over the last couple of months, the objectives have been very different. Normally, you know, with our suppliers, we kind of work on brand activation plans, in-store, out-of-store promotions, XYZ, where for the longest time, up until very recently, I think the main prerogative has just really been getting stock flowing in. There's not been much else kind of ultra dynamic happening out of that. Now that things have kind of settled back down, a little bit more of the sort of, you know, dynamic, innovative meetings are happening, but most of it is being done online.
Okay, cool. I know with us, I know a lot of our sales force in the beginning, even when things opened up, it was hard to meet buyers, for example, in the UAE, and obviously in the countries that the international customers, it's impossible. So it was all Zoom. However, we've noticed that it's easier because every company has a different policy in the UAE. So some retailers or some HoReCa customers, you can come to their office, and some you can't. So what we've been doing with our sales force is they're having meetings outside of the office, kind of in a neutral location, you know, with that partner or buyer, and just, you know, it's one-on-one or one-on-two, and, you know, sort of more open cafes, more open areas, whether it's MOE or Dubai Mall or something like that. So
yeah, I think a lot more can be unlocked when it's face-to-face. And I think at the same time, I'm not going to just kind of slam the online completely, because it's great technologies improved and enhanced all our lives, all our businesses to a degree. I think we just need to have a good balance between the two. I think probably before we were probably underutilizing these platforms, but now I think we should incorporate it, but let's not let it also not kind of take anything away from the benefits of how we kind of do business.
Okay. Hey, we have another question coming in from Nina, and her question is, how do you see the future of food service between now and the end of 2021? So she's kind of looking a little bit more long term. So food service is, you know, a whole different sector. I would probably say it's more HoReCa based, but Dinesh or Bilal, do you guys want to talk about that, how you see the food service space? And Chef Izu, you are a food service customer, so I'll pitch it to you right after that.
Look, I mean, let's be frank right now. I mean, a lot of restaurants were going through a tough time before COVID. A lot of, you know, so right now, I mean, already I've heard of certain restaurants which are going to be shutting up shop. That's going to have a negative impact on food service suppliers when it comes to collecting their payments. You know, I don't pay you, you don't pay him, he doesn't pay the next person. So just, you know, default creates a bad domino effect. I think you just have to look at simple economics and what's likely to occur.
Yeah. So Izu, Chef Izu, on the food service side, you know, obviously, I know Gaia is a very reputable restaurant. I think it attracts a certain crowd that's going to continue to come, but we've heard of a lot of restaurants going through challenges. What's your take on, let's not talk about your restaurant, but overall, I mean, what do you think's the impact going to be on restaurants shutting down or adapting? Any idea? I mean, you're in the business, so in that sector.
I mean, guys, I never like to sugarcoat. I don't even know how to sugarcoat something. But you go out there, you see a lot of businesses which are closed. I mean, yeah, there might be small businesses, but they still provide a service to the community. Let's be realistic. I mean, with everything that's happened, yeah, the restaurant scene will shrink. And I mean, and as Nidesh said, if now I don't collect money, I can't pay my suppliers, and then he can't pay his suppliers. And when everything shut down in March, there was a lot of people owed money, and I talk directly with my suppliers because, and one of them told me that he's got probably 14 million outside in the market. That is just, I mean, for any business, 14 million will hurt your pocket. And he's a close friend as well as my partner in business in the sense, because I look at all my suppliers as my partner, because that's a partnership that we create an experience for the customer. So the market will shrink, and the thing is,
and what's your Chef? What's your best guess? You know, if you've got 10 friends that open restaurants, how many do you think would go out of business, and how many do you think would adapt their business model, and how many would be okay? You know, I mean, I'm just curious. What's your guess on where you see the food service space in, say, let's say in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, you know, I can't give a guess, but the thing I'm saying is everyone could work it out. Everything is connected in life. If now he loses his job or he's got his paycheck cut, he's not going to go out. If now certain industries go out and bust, which is affected, because a restaurant scene is where you entertain and you make business deals. You sign on that contract because he's happy, and we just now became happy together. But now certain people are unhappy, so they can't go and make the other people happy. So it's a simple equation in the sense that the whole system is going through a certain kind of like
Can I add to Chef Izu? Look, in terms of food service, there's been, I mean, if you see the trends of what's happened during the last 2 months, a lot of them have gone online and they're trying to sell direct to consumer. I think one of the difficulties they faced is either they don't have a repackaging license, so they can't repack from their large pack size to smaller ones. The products they bought were just not for that, not a direct to consumer product. So I think we're going to see a shift in a lot of the distributors who do food service, who start one, moving digital a lot, two, getting everything in smaller packs, because they might put the same product that they'll find. No, maybe people stop buying everything in 10 kilo and 20 kilo. I've seen one of the companies sell croissants, like 120 croissant box online. Not many households will buy that, right? So there will be a shift. In terms of, I agree with these, let's not sugarcoat things. The restaurant business, it was overcrowded in the first place. It's going to, it's going to continue shrinking. So that was going to happen. It's happening faster, right? In terms of recovery, if I was to put a bet on it, I don't think I don't think that sector will recover fully before the end of the year. But I don't think it'll take much more. We went to Gaia. We saw how busy it was last weekend. I think a lot of the restaurants that were doing well before will have a much faster chance of recovery versus the ones that were already struggling. I think those will become extinct.
I mean, how do you guys feel about also price point? You know, I mean, people's pockets are not as deep as they used to be pre-COVID. So do you think that in the food service sector, do you think you're going to see a little less on the premium side and more, you know, do you think the price point's going to lower as too? I'm just curious.
No, I think if you look at Gaia, for example, they're not going to change their olive oils, product just because.
That's because Chef Izu has his own olive oil brand, by the way. That's never going. I think straight up about that one. Right
but it costs me more money to bring it here. That's what you got to remember.
It's your charity.
But I think food service alone, businesses that there are distributors that do food service and then that do retail and other channels. If you're just food service, you're the one most at risk right now, right? So. The ones who manage an optimum inventory and smaller pack sizes, direct to consumer, digital front, I think those are the most likely ones to have the guys with the big name.
Cool. No, that's a good point. Just before we wrap it up, I wanted to ask another question, a bit of a softer question, but Olivia, I'd love to get your perspective on. People have gone through so much change, in the last couple of months. The culture of individuals has changed. And I'm just wondering, did you notice any changes in your corporate culture going through this COVID? I know COVID gave a lot of people time to reflect, and it obviously impacted your business. Have you seen a difference in your culture, your corporate culture in the last couple of months?
I think we'll see in the next few months more, because we've obviously brought in a lot of new people. So I think this is where we'll see how we succeed in actually onboarding and integrating people and explaining them and showcasing them, even if it's remotely, what our values are and how you can live them day to day, even if you're not in touch with people. So I think we'll really see the aftermath of that in a couple of months, and I don't mind letting you know how we succeed. But for sure, the first thing is for us, we've done an engagement survey with the staff and just try to figure out what the problems are and try to solve those as quickly as we can.
Okay, great. Well, listen, everyone, we're up. We're finished with time, but I want to thank you all for participating in our webinar. It was really interesting to hear about how some companies are downsizing and how some companies are upsizing. It was really interesting to hear how you deal with people who get COVID, what's the protocols. I appreciated our conversation about Zoom, and we hope, the applications and capabilities like that don't go away soon. And how
we'll blast together
and
on Zoom
and all those other fun things. So thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks to the audience as well for all your questions. And we'll see you next week. Just FYI, next week is June 15th, same time at 2 p.m. And it's called Original Marketing Plan Scrap. So be sure to sign up for that one, and we'll talk marketing and marketing strategy. Thank you guys. Thank you, everyone.